As the world awaits the dedication of the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Sunday, the official dedication, many are taking the time to reflect and honor Dr. King by sharing their personal stories with the world. Joining us now in studio to share their interaction with the great Dr. King are Dr. Robert Williams from Howard University Hospital. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you.
And also Dean Evan Crawford, former Dean of Andrew Rankin Memorial Chapel. Mr. Crawford, good morning to you.
Good morning.
I'd like to thank you both for being with us today. Let me start with you, sir. You were in graduate school with Dr. King. Can you just tell us about the character, the person that we are celebrating now?
Well, Martin Luther King came to grad school. He had gone to school at Morehouse, of course.
Yes, sir.
He had gone up to school seminary. But he came to Boston University to study theology. And so I got to know him because there were a few of us there. As a matter of fact, Martin was always organizing things, and he organized students there. And I knew him because we had a little group in which one of the themes that ran through our conversation, what are we going to do if we graduate and go back home? Mm-hmm. And so Martin pioneered that, and that's how I got to know him. But I think it was about 4 or 5 of us up at the time. And so that's why I got him, and I've had him up at the church when I was pastor, a Baptist church up in Rhode Island. Mm-hmm. So, of course, I know him when he was courting Coretta. Mm-hmm. My wife was in the music school at Boston University. He's come to preach at the church I had at the time, Pond Street Church. I followed Dr. Samuel Proctor because he had come back to pastor down in the South and be president. So in those days, I got to know him, and because he organized a little group, the theme that we ran, what we were going to do when we came back home, and also we discussed things like we weren't necessarily had to write on a black theme. So Martin always led those kind of discussions.
Right. Mm-hmm. Always organized.
Yeah.
Dr. Williams, you were at the speech that the whole memorial is sort of wrapped around that day some 48 years ago, and you would go on to be a physician at in Resurrection City later. But let me go back to the speech first. Can you take us back to that day and your interactions, your feeling that day?
An absolute electrifying day. You never forget it. There was just a infusion of an energy, a feeling that's indescribable, so wonderful. And of course, all these many years later, still with this upcoming dedication, it resonates to this day with all of those hundreds of thousands of people who were there.
The dream realized in many ways.
Yes.
Today, with the dedication or with the monument or the memorial opening this week, that dream, we see it there in stone now. Would you think that this day would come?
I never imagined that it would come. I never imagined, of course, the presidency now occupied by President Obama. Not imaginable, but you could see, if you go back through the historical record, a building up to this wonderful time, and the success of the civil rights movement is led by Martin Luther King. Yes.
Could you take us also back to Resurrection City? It was again on the mall there. It was another campaign. This would go on without Dr. King, but it was met by, there were just several incidents that didn't make it the success that it probably could have been. And you were right there.
Right. It, of course, occurred in 1968, and Dr. Martin Luther King had been assassinated. And there were plans, though, in the making to have a Poor People's Campaign, Resurrection City, as it became known. And yes, we were there as a physician. The late Eddie Mazik, who's a physician in town of great renown, recruited me as a young doctor. He says, you have to work this van. Right. And he had recruited other physicians who were members of what we call the Medical Surgical Society here in D.C. And we manned the vans. And that's when I first met some of the civil rights leaders, Jesse Jackson, Marion Barry, people like that.
Right.
So, yep.
Dean Crawford, let me ask you, today where Dr. King gave that speech on the same grounds there is this 30-foot stone in his likeness. How surreal is that this moment has come some 48 years later, that moment is memorialized there on the mall for all to see?
Well, it's just a marvelous tribute to him. And of course, so many of our students participated in the March on Washington, and we heard the I Have a Dream speech. And it's just real, and when you see the company of other tributes, it's a very marvelous thing. And as I know him, I marched with him, he preached in the chapel often.
You would invite him back to Howard when you became dean there, yes.
We have visiting preachers. It's a non-denominational chapel. And so he came often. I had many wonderful talks with him as we drove back from the airport. I shared with him when he discussed, he said, Crawford, I'm getting a lot of these invitations to go around the world. He said, but I hate to leave my congregation. I tell them sometimes, he said, but that's one of the reasons he went with his father, because he was invited. He became known all over the world.
Right.
He came, he lectured. We had a Gandhi lecture, and he had come from England, and what they gave him, statues of Mahatma Gandhi. Then we had a Gandhi lecture that was sponsored at several schools. So it was just real to see him and to hear him speak, and our students were inspired, and to see that marvelous dedication to him. It's just absolutely wonderful.
Dr. Williams, would he be happy today? Would he be proud of this today?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I can't speak for such a great man,
yes,
but
sir.
I certainly think so, given the success. And we all stand on his shoulders, frankly. The man changed the world, literally. The moral compass of this nation. And he is now his legacy. He's one of the greatest men who's lived.
Right. And now everyone will see that for years to come. Dr. Robert Williams and Dean Evans Crawford, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Okay. Sarah, over to you.